The Arizona sun beat down on the dusty hills, turning the air shimmering and hot. It was 1886, a time of cowboys, wide open spaces, and secrets hidden beneath the desert floor. In the middle of nowhere, nestled amongst the scrub brush and cacti, was Ellie Hawkins' farm. From a distance, it looked like any other homestead, a small house with a barn and a few fields. But Ellie's farm was different. It was a place of quiet strength, much like Ellie herself. Ellie, short for Elenina, was a young woman with bright eyes and hair the color of sun-baked wheat. She wore simple dresses and worked hard in her fields, tending to her crops and animals. To anyone passing by, she seemed like just a regular farm girl. But appearances can be deceiving. Ellie had a secret, a skill that set her apart. Her father, a legendary Army scout named Hawkins, had taught her everything he knew about shooting. He'd shown her how to handle a rifle, how to aim with deadly accuracy, and how to stay calm under pressure. Even after his death, his lessons remained with her, a constant reminder of the man he was and the skills he imparted. She spent hours practicing, honing her skills until she could hit a dime from 50 paces. She kept her skills hidden, though, preferring to keep to herself and avoid unwanted attention. Life on the farm was peaceful, and she liked it that way. But peace in the Wild West was a fragile thing, easily broken by the arrival of trouble. And trouble, in the form of the Raven's Claw Gang, was heading straight for Ellie's farm. They were known for being mean, and they liked to steal from anyone they could. The Raven's Claw thought that because Ellie was a young woman living alone, they would be able to easily take from her, but they were wrong. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Dust devils danced across the horizon, signaling the arrival of unwanted guests. The Raven's Claw Gang, a rough bunch of men with scraggly beards and mean eyes, rode hard toward Ellie's farm. Their leader, a tall, lanky man named Jebediah, had a cruel smile that never reached his eyes. He'd heard tell of a young woman living alone on a farm, an easy target for the taking. This should be a piece of cake, Jebediah chuckled to his men, his voice raspy from years of shouting and whiskey. A little farm girl ain't gonna put up much of a fight. The other gang members grunted in agreement, their thoughts already on the loot they would steal. They imagined jewelry, money, and maybe even some good horses. They were used to bullying and taking what they wanted, and they didn't expect anything different this time. As they got closer, Ellie's farm came into view. It looked peaceful and quiet, just like Jebediah had imagined. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and chickens pecked in the yard. It seemed like the perfect place to rob. But as the gang approached, Ellie was already watching them from the window of her house, rifle in hand. She had seen them coming a long way off, and she knew what they wanted. She wasn't afraid, though. She had been preparing for this moment. Ellie took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. She remembered her father's words, "Always be ready, Ellie. You never know when trouble will come knocking." She sighted down the barrel of her rifle, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. The Raven's Claw Gang was about to get a very big surprise. They were riding into a trap, and Ellie was ready to spring it. The chickens scattered as the gang thundered into the yard, kicking up dust and shouting demands. This was it. Jebediah, still smiling cruelly, dismounted his horse, his boots kicking up dust as he swaggered toward the front door. "Hello, little lady," he called out, his voice dripping with false charm. "We're just passing through and thought we'd pay you a visit." Ellie remained hidden behind the window, her grip tightening on her rifle. She knew what kind of visit they were planning. She could hear the other gang members laughing and joking behind Jebediah, their words coarse and threatening. They thought she was just a helpless girl, alone and defenseless. They couldn't have been more wrong. The knowledge of her secret skill gave her strength. She remembered the countless hours she'd spent with her father learning to shoot. He had taught her not just how to aim, but how to breathe, how to focus, and how to control her fear. He had instilled in her a sense of determination that ran deeper than the desert wells. Her father always said, "A gun is just a tool, Ellie. It's what's in your heart that matters." And in Ellie's heart was a fierce protectiveness for her home and a burning desire to honor her father's memory. She wouldn't let these outlaws take what was rightfully hers. Jebediah banged on the door, his patience wearing thin. "Open up, little lady. We ain't got all day." Ellie took one last deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She knew she couldn't reason with these men. They only understood one language, force, and she was about to speak that language fluently. With a swift movement, she raised her rifle, aimed carefully, and fired a shot, not at Jebediah, but at the hat on his head. The hat flew off, landing in the dirt a few feet away. The laughter of the gang members stopped abruptly. A stunned silence fell over the yard. Ellie had just shown them that she was not to be trifled with. Jebediah stared at his hat lying in the dirt, his face a mask of disbelief. He couldn't believe what had just happened. A farm girl, a slip of a thing, had just shot the hat off his head. He slowly bent down and picked up his hat, brushing off the dust. "All right, little lady," he said, his voice now laced with a dangerous edge. "That was a cute trick, but now it's time to get serious." He gestured to his men, and they began to spread out, surrounding the house. Ellie knew she had their attention now, but she also knew that she was outnumbered. She had to think fast. She couldn't let them get close to the house. She needed to keep them at bay, using her marksmanship to her advantage. She quickly reloaded her rifle, her movements smooth and practiced. She peered out the window, choosing her next target. One of the gang members was trying to sneak around the back of the house. Ellie aimed carefully and fired another shot, this time hitting the ground right in front of his feet. The gang member jumped back in surprise, his eyes wide with fear. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Ellie called out, her voice clear and strong. "I'm a better shot than you think." Jebediah, realizing that this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought, shouted at his men to hold their positions. He knew that if they tried to rush the house, Ellie would pick them off one by one. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price. He needed a new plan. He scanned the surroundings, looking for anything he could use to his advantage. His eyes landed on the barn, a large wooden structure located a short distance from the house. A slow smile spread across his face. He had an idea. "All right, men," Jebediah yelled. "Forget the house. Let's burn the barn." Ellie's eyes widened in alarm. The barn was her livelihood. It housed her animals, her tools, and most of her winter feed. If it burned, she would lose everything. She couldn't let that happen. She knew she had to act fast. She couldn't just sit in the house and wait for them to burn it down. She had to take the fight to them. She grabbed her rifle and a handful of bullets, then slipped out the back door, moving silently and quickly through the tall grass. The gang members were already heading towards the barn, carrying torches and cans of kerosene. They were laughing and joking, confident that they had finally gained the upper hand. They didn't see Ellie coming. She moved like a shadow, using the trees and bushes for cover. She got close enough to the gang members, and then, with a loud yell, she jumped out, firing her rifle into the air. The gang members stopped in their tracks, startled by her sudden appearance. They turned to face her, their torches held high. "Drop your weapons," Ellie shouted, her voice filled with authority. "And get on the ground. Now." The gang members hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. They were still armed, and there were more of them than there was of her. But they had seen what she could do with a rifle, and they knew that she wouldn't hesitate to use it. One by one, they dropped their torches and cans of kerosene, then slowly got down on the ground, their faces filled with fear and resentment. Ellie had turned the tables on them. She had used her shooting skills and her courage to capture the notorious Raven's Claw gang. But she knew that this was just the beginning. She still had to figure out what to do with them. And she still had a feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. Standing over the subdued gang, Ellie surveyed the scene. Jebediah, his face red with anger and humiliation, glared up at her. The other gang members avoided her gaze, their bravado completely gone. "You thought I was just some helpless farm girl, didn't you?" Ellie said, her voice steady and unwavering. "You thought you could come here and take what was mine. You were wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then, she continued, "My name is Elenina Hawkins. My father was a scout, the best there ever was. He taught me everything I know about shooting, about survival, about standing up for what's right. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not afraid of any of you." She raised her rifle, pointing it directly at Jebediah. I'm a sharpshooter, just like my dad. And if you try anything at all, you'll regret it. Jebediah swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the barrel of the rifle. He knew that Ellie was telling the truth. He could see it in her eyes, in her stance, in the way she handled her weapon. She was no ordinary farm girl. She was a force to be reckoned with. All right, Jebediah mumbled, raising his hands in surrender. We get it. You're tough. Just don't shoot us. I'm not going to shoot you, Ellie said, but I'm going to turn you over to the authorities. You're going to pay for your crimes. She ordered the gang members to tie each other up, using their belts and ropes. Then, she mounted her horse, and, with her rifle in hand, she led the captured Raven's Claw gang towards the nearest town. As she rode, she couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had defended her home, she had captured a dangerous gang, and she had proven that she was more than just a farm girl. She was Elenina Hawkins, daughter of a legend, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did she know, the real challenge was only just beginning. After delivering the Raven's Claw gang to the sheriff in the dusty town of Redemption, Ellie returned to her farm, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Despite her success, a nagging feeling lingered in the back of her mind. Why the gang targeted her farm specifically? It didn't make sense. Back at her house, Ellie began to search through her father's old belongings, hoping to find some clue, some explanation for the day's events. She found his worn leather-bound journal, filled with his neat handwriting and sketches of landscapes. She flipped through the pages, reading about his adventures as a scout, his encounters with Native American tribes, and his observations of the natural world. Then, she stumbled upon a section of the journal that was written in code. It was a series of numbers and symbols that she didn't recognize. Her father had never mentioned anything about codes or secret messages. What could it mean? Driven by curiosity, Ellie spent hours trying to decipher the code. Finally, after much trial and error, she managed to crack it. The message was short and cryptic, but it sent a chill down her spine. It spoke of a European operation and a threat to the territory. It also mentioned her father's name. As she read the message, a horrifying realization dawned on her. Her father wasn't just a scout. He was an intelligence agent, a spy working for the United States government. And his death wasn't an accident. He had been murdered because of his work. The peace that Ellie had once known was now shattered, replaced by a dark and dangerous truth. Her father's legacy was more complex and far more dangerous than she ever imagined, and she was now caught in the middle of it. The Raven's Claw gang suddenly seemed like a minor problem compared to the secrets her father had been keeping. The coded message was just the beginning. Ellie continued to pore over her father's journal, searching for more clues about the European operation. She found fragmented entries, references to meetings in secret locations, and names of individuals she didn't recognize. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Her father had been investigating a conspiracy involving wealthy European businessmen who were secretly trying to gain control of valuable land and resources in the Arizona territory. They were using underhanded tactics, bribing local officials, and intimidating anyone who stood in their way. Her father had been close to uncovering their entire plan when he was killed. The accident that everyone had believed was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated murder. And now, Ellie was the only one who knew the truth. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on her shoulders. She was just a farm girl. What could she possibly do against such powerful and influential people? But she couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Her father had dedicated his life to protecting this territory, and she wouldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. She knew she was walking into a dangerous situation, but she was determined to see it through. She would expose the conspiracy, bring the perpetrators to justice, and clear her father's name. But first, she needed to gather more information. She needed to find out who these Europeans were, what their plan was, and who was helping them on the inside. She decided to start by visiting some of her father's old contacts, people who might have known about his secret work. It was a risky move, but it was the only way to uncover the truth. And Ellie Hawkins was not one to back down from a challenge. The quiet farm girl was gone, replaced by a determined agent of justice. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ellie prepared to follow in her father's footsteps. She wasn't just defending her home anymore. She was upholding his legacy, fighting for the very principles he stood for. She decided that she would become the hero he always was. The next morning, Ellie packed a small bag with supplies, some dried meat, a canteen of water, a bedroll, and extra ammunition for her rifle. She knew that she would be traveling through dangerous territory, and she needed to be prepared for anything. Before leaving, she went to her father's grave, a simple wooden cross overlooking the valley. She knelt down and placed a single wildflower on the grave. "I'm going to find out who did this, Papa," she whispered, "and I'm going to make them pay." As she rode away from her farm, Ellie felt a mix of emotions: fear, determination, and a deep sense of loss. She was leaving behind the only life she had ever known, but she knew that she couldn't stay. She had to find the truth, even if it meant putting her own life in danger. Her first stop was the town of Black Ridge, a small mining town where her father had spent a lot of time. She remembered him mentioning a few names of people he trusted there, individuals who might be able to shed some light on the conspiracy. As she rode into Black Ridge, Ellie couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The town was rough and tumble, filled with rough-looking men and a general atmosphere of lawlessness. She knew that she had to be careful. She couldn't trust anyone. She was entering a world of secrets and lies, where danger lurked around every corner. But Ellie Hawkins was ready. She was armed, she was determined, and she was ready to fight for justice, just like her father had taught her. The journey had truly begun. Before venturing into Black Ridge, Ellie knew she needed to be at her absolute best. She found a secluded spot just outside town, a small canyon with natural rock formations that would serve as her training ground. Each morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Ellie would begin her drills. She practiced drawing her rifle quickly and accurately, firing at targets she had set up at varying distances. She remembered her father's words: "Speed and accuracy, Ellie. That's what will keep you alive." She worked on her breathing, learning to control her heart rate and stay calm under pressure. She practiced shooting from different positions, standing, kneeling, and lying down. She even practiced shooting while moving, imagining she was being chased by enemies. Ellie also honed her hand-to-hand combat skills. Her father had taught her some basic self-defense techniques, but she knew she needed to improve. She used the rocks and trees as training partners, practicing punches, kicks, and blocks. She pushed herself to her limits, enduring the scorching heat and the constant fatigue. She knew that her life might depend on her skills, and she was determined to be ready for anything. As the days passed, Ellie could feel herself getting stronger, faster, and more confident. Her shooting became more precise, her movements more fluid, and her reflexes sharper. She was transforming from a farm girl into a skilled warrior, ready to face the dangers that lay ahead. She spent hours cleaning and maintaining her rifle, ensuring it was in perfect working order. It was more than just a weapon. It was a tool, a companion, and a symbol of her father's legacy. With each passing day, Ellie felt more and more like her father, a protector, a guardian, a force for good in a world filled with darkness. She was ready to enter Black Ridge, not just as Ellie Hawkins, but as the embodiment of her father's spirit. Ellie rode into Black Ridge, her senses on high alert. The town was even more unsettling than she had imagined. Men with hardened faces eyed her suspiciously as she passed, and the air was thick with the smell of whiskey and stale smoke. She consulted her father's journal, looking for the names of people he had trusted. The first name on her list was Silas, a grizzled old prospector who ran a small trading post on the edge of town. According to the journal, Silas had been a valuable source of information for her father in the past. Ellie found Silas's trading post without much difficulty. It was a small, run-down shack filled with dusty supplies and strange artifacts. Silas himself was sitting behind the counter, cleaning a rusty old rifle. "Looking for something, miss?" Silas asked, his voice raspy and suspicious. "I'm looking for information," Ellie said, holding up a picture of her father. "I'm Hawkins's daughter. He said I could trust you." Silas's eyes widened in surprise. He took the picture and studied it carefully. "Hawkins's girl? Well, I'll be. I haven't seen him in a long time. What brings you to Black Ridge? Ellie explained about her father's death and the conspiracy she had uncovered. Silas listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each passing word. Hawkins was onto something big, Silas said when she had finished. He was asking a lot of questions about some European fellas who were buying up land around here. He thought they were up to no good. Silas told Ellie that her father had been investigating a nearby town called Dust Creek, where the Europeans had established their headquarters. He warned her that Dust Creek was even more dangerous than Black Ridge, and that she should be careful. But Ellie was determined to follow her father's trail wherever it led. Dust Creek was her next stop. The conspiracy was getting closer. As Ellie prepared to leave Black Ridge for Dust Creek, a man approached her outside Silas's trading post. He was tall and lean, with a weathered face and piercing blue eyes. He wore a worn leather jacket and a Stetson hat that shadowed his features. "You're Hawkins's daughter, aren't you?" he said, his voice low and gravelly. Ellie tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for her rifle. "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. "My name is Cole," the man said. "I knew your father. We worked together a long time ago." Ellie studied him carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. She had learned to be wary of strangers, especially in a place like Black Ridge. "What kind of work did you do with my father?" she asked. "Let's just say we were in the same line of business," Cole said cryptically. "I heard about what happened to him. I'm sorry for your loss." Cole offered to help Ellie with her investigation, claiming that he knew a lot about the European conspiracy and that he had contacts in Dust Creek. He said that he wanted to see justice done for her father. Ellie was torn. On the one hand, she needed all the help she could get. Cole seemed to know what he was talking about, and he claimed to have a connection to her father. On the other hand, she didn't know him from Adam. He could be working for the Europeans, trying to lead her into a trap. "Why should I trust you?" Ellie asked, her eyes narrowed. Cole shrugged. "You shouldn't," he said honestly, "but I'm the only one who's offered to help you so far. You're going to need someone on your side if you want to take down those Europeans." Ellie hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. She knew that trusting Cole was a gamble, but she also knew that she couldn't do this alone. "All right," she said finally. "I'll take your help. But if you betray me, I'll make you regret it." Cole nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I wouldn't dream of it," he said. "Let's ride." But could he really be trusted? Ellie and Cole rode out of Black Ridge, the tension between them palpable. Ellie kept a close eye on Cole, still unsure whether she could trust him. He seemed to be watching her too, his blue eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. As they rode through a narrow canyon just outside of town, they were ambushed. 3 men on horseback rode out from behind the rocks, blocking their path. Ellie recognized them immediately. They were friends of the Raven's Claw gang, sent to avenge their capture. Well, the leader of the gang said, his voice sneering. "Look what we have here. It's the little farm girl who put our friends in jail." Ellie drew her rifle, her movements swift and practiced. "I don't want any trouble," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Just let us pass." "Trouble is what you're going to get," the gang leader said, drawing his own weapon. "You mess with the wrong people." Cole drew his own gun, a Colt Peacemaker, and aimed it at the gang. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said, his voice cold and menacing. "You're outgunned." The gang leader laughed. 3 against 2? I like those odds." Without warning, the gang leader fired his gun. The bullet whizzed past Ellie's head. She didn't hesitate. She raised her rifle and fired back, hitting the gang leader in the chest. He slumped over in his saddle and fell to the ground. Cole fired his gun too, hitting one of the other gang members in the arm. The wounded gang member cried out in pain and dropped his weapon. The 3rd gang member, seeing that they were outmatched, turned his horse around and fled. Ellie and Cole quickly reloaded their weapons and chased after the fleeing gang member, but he was too fast. They watched as he disappeared over the horizon. "We need to get out of here," Cole said urgently. "They'll be back with reinforcements." Ellie nodded, her heart pounding. She knew that they were in serious danger. The Raven's Claw gang had friends in Black Ridge, and they wouldn't stop until they had their revenge. They had to get to Dust Creek, and they had to get there fast. But could she really trust Cole to lead the way? "They'll know we're heading to Dust Creek," Cole said, his voice grim. "They'll try to cut us off." Ellie nodded, already thinking of a plan. "We can't go straight there. We need to lose them first." She remembered a narrow, winding trail her father had shown her years ago, a shortcut through the mountains that only a few people knew about. It was dangerous and difficult to navigate, but it was their only chance to escape. "I know a way," Ellie said, "but it's going to be rough." They turned their horses off the main road and onto a barely visible path that led into the mountains. The trail was steep and rocky, and the air grew thin as they climbed higher. They rode for hours, pushing their horses to their limits. They crossed rushing streams, navigated treacherous cliffs, and dodged falling rocks. Ellie relied on her knowledge of the terrain and her sharp instincts to guide them through the wilderness. Cole, despite his gruff exterior, proved to be a skilled rider and a valuable ally. He helped Ellie scout ahead, clear obstacles, and keep a lookout for pursuers. As darkness fell, they found a small cave where they could rest for the night. They built a small fire, careful to keep it hidden from view, and ate some dried meat. "Do you think we lost them?" Ellie asked, her voice tired. "I don't know," Cole said, "but we can't let our guard down. They'll be looking for us." Ellie knew that Cole was right. They were still in danger, but she was determined to reach Dust Creek and uncover the truth about her father's death. She wouldn't let anyone stop her, not even the friends of the Raven's Claw gang. As she drifted off to sleep, she clutched her rifle tightly, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had escaped for now, but the real test was yet to come. After a long and arduous journey through the mountains, Ellie and Cole finally arrived in Dust Creek. The town was even more desolate and menacing than Black Ridge. It was clear that the European businessmen had taken control, and the locals lived in fear. Cole led Ellie to a dilapidated saloon on the edge of town, claiming it was a neutral place where they could gather information. The saloon was dimly lit and filled with shady characters. Ellie kept her hand close to her rifle, ready for anything. As they sat at a table, nursing their drinks, Ellie noticed a group of men huddled in a back room, speaking in hushed tones. Cole told her that they were likely connected to the Europeans. Driven by curiosity, Ellie decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. She slipped out of the saloon and crept around to the back of the building, pressing her ear against the wall. She could hear the men speaking in a mix of English and German. They were discussing a plan to seize control of a valuable gold mine located just outside of town. They mentioned bribing the local sheriff and intimidating the mine owners. Ellie realized that she had stumbled upon a major piece of the conspiracy. The Europeans weren't just interested in land. They were after the territory's natural resources as well. Suddenly, one of the men inside the room stopped talking. "Did you hear something?" he asked, his voice suspicious. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that she had been discovered. She had to get out of there, and fast. But before she could move, the door to the back room swung open, and the men emerged, their faces grim. Ellie was caught. What'd she do now? The conspirators had found her. The men grabbed Ellie, their grip rough and unforgiving. They dragged her back into the saloon, where Cole was waiting, his face a mask of concern. "What's going on here?" Cole asked, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. "This little lady was eavesdropping on our conversation," one of the men said, his voice menacing. "I think she knows too much." The men surrounded Ellie and Cole, their eyes filled with hostility. It was clear that they were outnumbered and outgunned. Suddenly, a tall, imposing figure emerged from the back room. He was dressed in an expensive suit and had a stern expression on his face. He spoke with a thick German accent. "What is the meaning of this commotion?" he asked, his voice booming. "This woman was spying on us. Herr Schmidt," one of the men said. "We think she knows about the gold mine." Herr Schmidt turned his gaze to Ellie, his eyes cold and calculating. "Who are you?" he asked. "And what do you know?" Ellie stood tall, refusing to show any fear. "My name is Elenina Hawkins," she said, her voice steady. "My father was a scout, and I know everything about your little conspiracy." "Herr Schmidt's Eisnahot." "Hawkins," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "Your father was a fool. He interfered with our plans. And now, you will pay the price for his mistakes." He gestured to his men. "Take her away," he said. "We will deal with her later." The men grabbed Ellie again, dragging her towards the back of the saloon. Cole tried to intervene, but he was quickly overpowered. As Ellie was being dragged away, she locked eyes with a Schmidt. "You won't get away with this," she said, her voice filled with defiance. "I'm going to expose you, and I'm going to bring you to justice." Herr Schmidt simply smirked. "We shall see about that," he said. "We shall see." Ellie had faced the leader, but the situation was dire. Ellie was locked in a small, dark cell in the back of the saloon. She could hear the sounds of the town outside, but she felt isolated and alone. She knew that she had to escape, but she didn't know how. Suddenly, the door to her cell creaked open. It was Cole. "I'm getting you out of here," he whispered. "But we have to be quick." Cole explained that he had managed to overpower one of the guards and steal the keys to her cell. He had a plan to get them both out of Dust Creek, but it was risky. Together, they crept through the back alleys of the town, avoiding the main streets where the Europeans' men were patrolling. They made their way to the outskirts of Dust Creek, where they found their horses waiting. As they were about to ride away, they were confronted by Herr Schmidt and his men. They were surrounded. "I knew you couldn't be trusted, Cole," Herr Schmidt said, his voice filled with anger. "You were working with her all along." Cole didn't respond. He drew his gun and aimed it at a Schmidt. "This doesn't have to end this way, Schmidt," Cole said. "Just let us go, and we'll forget this ever happened." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Herr Schmidt said, smirking. "You know too much, and so does she." He gestured to his men, and they opened fire. Ellie and Cole returned fire, engaging in a fierce gun battle. Bullets whizzed through the air, and the sound of gunfire echoed through the town. Ellie used her sharpshooting skills to take down several of Herr Schmidt's men. Cole fought bravely, but he was outnumbered. Finally, it came down to a showdown between Ellie and Herr Schmidt. They stood face to face, their guns pointed at each other. The fate of Dust Creek, and perhaps the entire territory, hung in the balance. Ellie had to win. Her courage would be tested. Ellie and Herr Schmidt stood motionless for a moment, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, Herr Schmidt made his move. He raised his gun and fired. Ellie reacted instantly. She dodged the bullet and fired back, her aim true. The bullet struck Herr Schmidt in the chest, and he staggered backward, his face contorted in pain and disbelief. He fell to the ground, his reign of terror finally over. With Herr Schmidt defeated, the remaining members of his gang surrendered. The townspeople of Dust Creek, who had been living in fear for so long, emerged from their homes, cheering and celebrating their newfound freedom. Cole, who had been wounded in the gun battle, limped over to Ellie. "It's over," he said, his voice weak but relieved. "It's over," Ellie agreed, a smile spreading across her face. With the help of Cole and the townspeople, Ellie gathered evidence of Herr Schmidt's conspiracy, including documents, letters, and financial records. She sent the evidence to the authorities, who quickly moved in to arrest the remaining members of the gang and restore order to Dust Creek. The truth about her father's death was finally revealed, and his name was cleared. He was hailed as a hero, a brave and selfless man who had sacrificed his life to protect the territory. Ellie had avenged her father's death, exposed the conspiracy, and brought peace to Dust Creek. She had transformed from a farm girl into a symbol of hope and justice. But her journey was not yet over. There was still one more chapter to write. What would she do next? The territory needed her. With Dust Creek safe and the European conspirators brought to justice, Ellie faced a new question. What next? She knew she couldn't simply return to her quiet life on the farm. She had seen too much, learned too much, and changed too much. The territory needed her. Cole, recovering from his wounds, approached Ellie with an offer. He revealed that he was an agent for the United States government, working to protect the Arizona territory from threats both foreign and domestic. He asked Ellie to join him, to use her skills and her courage to continue her father's work. Ellie considered the offer carefully. She knew that it would be a dangerous life, filled with uncertainty and risk. But she also knew that it was the right thing to do. She couldn't turn her back on the people who needed her. "I'll do it," Ellie said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll continue my father's work. I'll protect others and fight for what's right. And so, Eloanina Ellie Hawkins embarked on a new path, transforming from a farm girl into a fearless agent of justice. She traveled throughout the Arizona Territory, helping those in need, exposing corruption, and bringing criminals to justice. She became a legend, a symbol of hope for the oppressed, and a force to be reckoned with for the wicked. She was known as the sharpshooter, a mysterious figure who appeared out of nowhere to right wrongs and disappear just as quickly. Ellie never forgot her father, and she always honored his memory by living a life of courage, integrity, and service. She knew that he would be proud of the woman she had become, and as she rode off into the sunset, ready to face her next challenge, Ellie knew that she was finally living up to her full potential. She was Eloanina Hawkins, and she was ready to save the world, one bullet at a time. The end.